Welcome students. This is our second video of Economics Unit 2, that is Indicators of Growth and Development. In the previous video, we have seen that the concept of economic growth and development became more popular after the Second World War of 1939 to 1944. These two terms were used interchangeably, that also we have seen. And the first question that we dealt with was meaning of economic growth and its limitation. Now today our second question is economic development, that is meaning of economic development, characteristics and limitations, these three. Now when we are talking about economic development, obviously it is different from the economic growth. So growth is a different term and economic development is a different term. Both are different. Economic growth is a solution for the economic problems of developed countries, as it is said by Professor Mrs. Ursula Hicks. And what was her next statement? That the solution for the economic problems of developing country is economic development. So today the question that we are going to see is a solution for the economic problem of developing countries, that is countries like India. Now, economic development. Two definitions I have written on a board. The one that is given by MacLup and another one that is given by Michael Trodaro. Now, these are two definitions where one indicates the traditional meaning and the another one, within a sentence, it gives all comprehensive meaning of economic development. For example, in very few words, Todaro says that economic development is a multi-dimensional process. Economic development is a multi-dimensional process. No doubt, it is useful for developing country, but as we have seen in the previous video, that the concept of economic development is also useful for the developed countries, but for some other reasons. Means the reason behind that for both the types of countries are different. Secondly, in economic growth, the focus was on only quantitative changes. Here, the focus is on quantitative changes as well as qualitative changes. So, it's a multi-dimensional process. Economic development is a multi-dimensional process. This is one of the MCQs which are asked in board examination, that development is a multi-dimensional process. Who gave this definition? And the four options will be given, and the correct one would be Todaro, Michael Todaro. The second is given by MacLup. Now, the MacLup has defined economic development in a very depth sense. Means he tried to give the exact reason for economic development. He is giving importance to the factor of production. He gives importance to the techniques of production. Those are actual reasons behind economic development. Those are actual reasons behind economic development. So let us start the definition given by him, that economic development refers to what? Continuous increase. Now see, here the word is continuous and the first characteristic is continuous process. It refers to continuous increase in per capita income and standard of living. Now keep these words in mind. In economic growth, only increase in the real national income and real per capita income was considered. No welfare was considered. But here, increase in per capita income and standard of living. Because for the countries like India, standard of living is most important. People are deprived of many facilities. People do not have an acceptable standard of living. So, economic development refers to what it refers to? That continuous increase in per capita income and standard of living for a longer period. Yes, like see the situation of India in 1947, situation of India in 1970, situation of India in 1991, and the progress of the situation of India in the year 2020. There is a lot of change. So when for one particular year this change takes place, then it's not a development. Development refers to continuous increase and that continuous increase for a longer period. Continuous increase and that continuous increase for a longer period. So see, it refers to increase in the per capita income and the standard of living for a longer period. Now, what is the reason after that? How PCI and standard of living increases for a longer period? So, the reason behind that is due to change in the factors of production and production technique. Due to change in the factors of production, that is land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. See, one characteristic is here, labor. So if the definition is very clear, all these characteristics will be more clear. And techniques of production, see here, it is change in the technology. So if the definition given by the authors, the economist, is easily understood, then it will be very helpful for characteristics. So once again, both the definition I am going to repeat. According to Todaro, economic development is a multidimensional process, and according to MacLup, economic development refers to continuous increase in the per capita income and the standard of living for a longer period due to change in factor of production and production technique. Not only in the factor of production, but we want change in both. Change in factors as well as change in the techniques of production. So now, on the basis of these two definitions, here are few characteristics which will give us more clear understanding of the given concept, and that the number one is continuous process. Continuous process. So here it was continuous. Economic development doesn't mean that for a particular month or for a particular year your country has grown up. For a particular month or for a particular year there is increase in the standard of living or per capita income. But economic development refers to continuous increase, and that continuous increase for a longer period. So when in your country per capita income increases, standard of living increases, and even that increase is recorded for a pretty longer period of time, then it is known as economic development. This is the first characteristic of economic development. Number two, both changes. It means economic development refers to both the type of changes, qualitative, quantitative. Where in case of economic growth, only quantitative changes were there. And here it includes both the changes. Means production of a country is also important, but along with that, institutional changes, psychological changes is also important. Social structure of a country is also important. So, in economic growth, it only includes quantitative changes. But in economic development, both the type of changes are recorded, that is qualitative changes as well as quantitative changes. Now, number 3, change in demand. See, when a country is underdeveloping, when a country is underdeveloping, and later on with the stages of development, if it becomes or it changes from underdeveloping nation to a developing nation, there is change in the form of demand. There is change in the form of demand. That is, in the initial year, there is demand for the basic necessity goods. But gradually, with the progress of a nation, gradually with the process of economic development, the demand changes from basic commodity to the luxurious commodity. That is, in the initial stage of development, the demand is more for day-to-day commodity, for necessity goods, and that demand necessity changes to luxurious one. That is change in the demand. So number 1 was continuous process. Number 2, both the changes, qualitative, quantitative both. Number 3, change in the form of demand. Number 4, labor more dynamic. Now see, as economic development is a multi-dimensional process, means with the greater degree of economic development, the level of education in a nation also increases. The level of education in a nation also increases. So when we are talking about economic development, the focus is on education also. When the education is given to the laborers also, they become more dynamic. Here dynamic means they are ready to accept the changes easily. They are willing to accept the changes. So if a production technique changes and a proper training is given to the workers, so due to their education, they are ready to accept the change. So labor becomes more dynamic. Number 5 is change in the state of technology. Yes. See, the technology point is important in both the cases. That is, in economic growth also technology is important, and in economic development also technology is important. But when we are talking about economic development, that technology changes, and due to change in the technology, production technique changes. Due to change in the production technique, the quantity and the quality of the goods and services to be produced also increases. So per capita income will increase as there is increase in the production, and that increase will result into GDP, that will result into GNP, that will result into national income, and that will result into per capita income. And along with the quality of goods, standard of living also increases. So when I am talking about change in technology, it has a greater impact. Then the last one is self-motivating, which means you just need to achieve, or you just need to lead the people towards economic development, then after some time that process becomes self-motivating. For example, if in 11th standard you have scored first rank or second rank in a school, then for the very next examination, that your previous score will motivate you. That your previous score will motivate you to perform in a better way. Same way, if a country starts economic development, then after a particular stage, that development becomes self-motivating. Means the development of your nation will again lead to develop a country in a or for a brighter future. No doubt, economic growth and economic development, both the concepts are right, correct, important, they hold equal importance. But when we are talking about the concept, not a single concept is free from limitation. We have seen the limitations of economic growth also. Now we are going to discuss the limitations of economic development. Mainly there are three limitations. Number one, not an index of human progress. That is, it measures the quantitative changes, it measures the qualitative changes, it measures the increase in per capita income, it measures increase in the standard of living. All are right. But when we are talking about human progress, human development, that economic development does not show a true progress of human. For measuring human progress, we have one more indicator, that is HDI, Human Development Index, presented by two economists of the world, Amartya Sen of India and Mehboob ul Haq of Pakistan. They both have presented it, and the very first report was given in the year 1990. So, we have a separate indicator for measuring human progress. We have separate indicator for measuring human progress. Economic development does not measure true human progress. Number two, difficult to measure social change. See, economic development, economic and social, both the changes are considered. But social changes is always qualitative in nature. It's not a quantitative. I mean, it's not an objective, it's a subjective one. The definition of social development for different economists is different. That is, for one person, a country has achieved social development, but there are chances that from the viewpoint of other economists, still a country is far away for attaining desired level of economic development, desired level of social development. So number two is economic development includes social changes, but in reality it is very difficult that how to measure, it's very difficult to measure social changes. Number three is like, it is said that if economic development or the degree of economic development rises, it results into good standard of living. Economic development rises, the degree of economic development rises, increase in the economic development increases the standard of living. But the same point has an exception, that in India we have attained a good level of economic development. The degree of economic development continuously rises, but desired change is not obtained in standard of living. Means the degree or the extent to economic development has changed, standard of living has not changed. So now our next question will be the difference between question 1 and question 2. That is a question that we have seen in the previous video, economic growth, and the question that we have seen now, that is economic development. So let us move towards our third question, that is difference between economic growth and economic development. So after studying the concept of economic growth and economic development, now the difference will be more clear. Total 8 points I have written. In board examination, the question may be asked in section D, that is 3 marks. In 3-mark question, 6 points are enough. Still, you need to remember 8 points. Number 1, meaning. Number 2, nature. Number 3, changes. Number 4, focus. Number 5, countries. Number 6, measurement. Number 7, concept. And number 8, that is progress or process. Now actually in your textbook, the points of difference are not given. These points of difference will be easy to remember. In textbook, directly the difference between economic development and economic growth in a descriptive manner is given, both the side, but points are not there. So these points will be helpful to you. Number 1 is meaning. Now the meaning that we have seen in case of economic growth, that is continuous increase in the real per capita income and real national income, or continuous rise in the quantum of goods and service, that is known as economic growth. The difference that we have seen in previous lecture. And economic development that we have seen before few minutes, according to Tudaro or according to MacLeod. You can write either of the definition in case of meaning. You can write either of the definition. If you write economic development is a multi-dimensional process, okay, that's also right. And if you write economic development refers to the continuous rise in the national income, per capita income and standard of living for a longer period due to change in the factors of production and production technique, तो भी ये right ही है. So number 1 is meaning. Meaning of economic development, meaning of economic growth. Number 2 is nature. Actually, economic development is a process, that is, it takes time. And economic growth is an occurrence. After attaining the process of economic development, economic growth can be defined as occurrence. That is, economic development, it's a process, while economic growth is a occurrence. For a developing country, it takes time to attain economic development, and the developed nations have already attained economic development, that they have already passed through this process, and economic growth is now occurrence for them. Number 3, changes. As we have seen in the previous questions, economic development constitutes quantitative and qualitative both changes, and economic growth only focuses on quantitative changes. So economic growth only quantitative changes, economic development quantitative, qualitative, both. Then number 4, focus. See, when it comes to developed nations, they already have the resources. They just need to distribute those available resources. And when we are talking about developing countries, they also have resources. But there, the question is to utilize unutilized resources. To utilize unutilized resources. Because in developing countries, there are many resources that the country is having, but they don't know how to make the use of it. So, in case of economic development, the emphasis is given on utilization of unutilized resources. And when it comes to economic growth, the question arises of distribution of available resources. Distribution of available resources. Number 5, countries. As it is stated by Professor Mrs. Ursula Hicks, that economic development is the solution for the problems of developing countries, and economic growth is a solution for the problems of developed countries. So, economic development is related with the developing countries and economic growth is related with developed countries. Next is measurement. As we have seen in case of limitations of economic development, that economic development is very difficult to measure, as we need to measure the social changes. And yes, economic growth is easy to measure, as it's an occurrence, and it's difficult to measure as it's a process. It's a subjective matter, so it's very difficult to measure. Then, number 7, concept. See, as economic development is a multidimensional process, as economic development not only focus on quantitative changes, but it focuses on qualitative changes like social and psychological. So, it's a broad process. It's a broad concept. And when it comes to economic growth, as it's not a process, it's an occurrence, it's a narrow concept. It's a narrow concept. Then, number 8, process. See, if I say that height of an individual is a growth, and the brain, I mean the development of a brain. So when I say development of a brain, it takes time. Gradually with your age, your brain develops. But when it comes to height, it's an occurrence. Out of 100, 90% individuals' height increases with their age. But we cannot say that the brain is developed with the age. That is, it's a long process. There are chances that a 5-year-old kid is a genius and talking like a people like 18-20 year of age. And there are people who are talking like a kid also. So, when it comes to development of a brain, like we are talking about or comparing it with development of developing countries, it's a slow process. And when it comes to economic growth, it's a rapid process. Now, once again, difference between economic growth and economic development. Total 8 points we have. First, meaning, whatever we have seen in question number 1 and question number 2, you can write the meaning here. Number 2, nature. It's a process, it's a occurrence. Changes. It includes qualitative, quantitative, both the changes. It includes only quantitative changes. Number 4, focus. Focus is on utilization of unutilized resources. and here focus is on distribution of resources. Number 5, countries. Economic development is for developing countries and economic growth is for developed countries. Then measure. Economic development is difficult to measure, economic growth is easy to measure. When it comes to concept, economic development is a broad concept, economic growth is a narrow concept, and the last, process. It's a slow process, it's a rapid process. Now, the next and the last question is indicators. There are 4 indicators of economic development. There are 4 indicators of economic development. As India is a developing country and the solution for the economic problems of a developing countries is economic development. So we are going to study the indicators of development. The indicators of development. Total 4 indicators we have: national income, per capita income, physical quality of life index, and human development index. Total 4 indicators we have. Now, all these indicators were developed gradually. In the present video, we are just going to have a very short, a very brief idea of indicators. The detailed study we will undertake in the next video. National income, the concept of national income was developed first. Then, due to certain limitations, the concept of per capita income was developed, and it is still treated as one of the best indicators of economic development. That the progress of a 2 countries, economic development of a 2 countries can be easily measured with the help of per capita income. And this concept we have already seen in 11th standard. Then, due to the limitations of per capita income, third concept, that is physical quality of life index. Physical quality of life index. It was developed in the year 1979 by Professor Morris. And due to the limitations of PQLI, a new concept was developed, Human Development Index, in the year 1990, as we have said earlier, by 2 economists of the world, one from India, one from Pakistan. From India, Amartya Sen, and from Pakistan, Mehboob ul Haq. And the first report was given in the year 1990. So, this one was a very short idea about indicators. In the next video, we will cover national income, per capita income, and PQLI. National income, per capita income, and PQLI. So, thank you.